Well, hello there, folks. Welcome back to this channel, which is all about helping you become the very best trainer, presenter, facilitator that you truly can be. Now, in today's video, it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a moment of me walking you through some activities you can actually do with your learners or workshop participants. Now, we need to appreciate, and something I often talk about on this channel, is it's not about how much you get through, but how much actually gets through to your learners. Now, a big part of that is how do you actually get them part of the learning process? And if you've hung out with me previously, you might have heard me touch on the metaphor of the life jacket, the life jacket, the life jacket. And if you choose to absorb this metaphor here, folks, you will find that your, criteria for success and criteria for active engagement really changes, right? So let's play with the metaphor for just a second here. Let me explain. So basically, the idea of the life jacket here is I would postulate. I've been on a lot of airplanes, but I would postulate that I probably have zero confidence to be able to put on that life jacket and be able to survive if that plane crashes into the ocean there, right? Now, you may be thinking, Mark, you haven't been paying attention, or Mark, you really should be not looking at your phone when they're doing the demonstration. Yes, all that aside, but let's get to the core reason why potentially I got zero confidence to be able to do that. Logic would tell us that I've never actually put on the life jacket. So how could I say that I could actually do the thing, right? But many times in the world of training, presenting, workshop facilitating, we show a thing and then we go, oh, I've showed it, so of course they've remembered it. Or, um, they've talked to someone about it, or maybe they have done some research. Whatever it may be, we make the assumption that just because they've heard it or seen it, or maybe even just done an activity with it once, they've fully embodied it, they've fully remembered it. And of course, learning is complete. I would postulate that learning isn't complete until somebody's actually done something with it, reflected on it, potentially even used it in the marketplace and back in the workplace, right? So learning is a process, and the more we can actually get our learners actively involved in the learning process, the higher the probability people will actually retain the information. What a crazy idea, right? But it also speaks to the idea of unless someone's done something with it, we can't actually say they've learned it. All right. So don't fall into the trap of thinking, I put it onto the slide, so of course they've remembered it. Potentially not, right? So what I'm actually going to go through right now in this document is what have I got here, folks? I've actually got 11 strategies, 11 types of activities that you can actually run with your learners or workshop participants to actually get them even more involved in the content. Now, the other thing is that this 11 examples here is actually tied to the neurology of the brain and the way the brain actually remembers information, right? The really cool thing of what I'm about to show you is that you can use any of these 11 strategies in your own field. And the context I'm going to show it to you in is in the context of the world of vocational education training in Australia, right? So it's going to be very specific to that, but just know that you could change it to any of the topic that you actually present on as well, right? So don't get lost in the weeds of the topic. Just zoom out and go, okay, yep, I can see that structure, I can see that style, and I can just change to my own content, and you pretty much got an activity ready to go there, folks. So let's jump into it. Let me bring up my document, and I am more than happy for you to email me at the end of this video or drop a comment below and say, could you send me a copy of what I have just gone through there, folks, right? So on that note, let me go ahead and bring up my slides here, and that will be really good. Awesome, folks. So let me just bring it over to the magical screen over here, and let's get ready to rock and roll as we bring this uh, to your attention there, folks. Alrighty, so let's jump into it. So, as I said, this is all about giving you multiple examples of different activities you can actually use with your audience and basically plug and play, so to speak, right? So, let me zoom in. So, we have these 11 types, and I'm going to run through each, explain each, and then showing you an example of each there, right? So number one is fill in the blank activity, right? So as I said, if you want a copy of this, feel free, shoot me a message or shoot me a comment just below and I'll send it through to you. So number one is a fill in the blank activity. Now this taps into the idea that we're going to teach something, and as we teach it, we can get people to fill in the blanks, or at the very end, we can use it as a quiz at the end of our session that we deliver there, right? Whether your topic is leadership or sales or whatever it may be, right? The fill in the blank style is going to be a great activity, get people actively involved and guessing what comes into the next thing that you're going to say. Number two is a mix and match activity and a definition version, right? So basically, you can have the concept, you can have the definition, and then people need to mix and match them up together. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like in just a moment. Then we've got a mix and match activity, an example of a mismatch, right? So an example of where the definition is this, but in life where it hasn't been matched or hasn't been achieved, so to speak, or it could be, for example, a legislation. And you could have the legislation, and then you could have an example of the legislation being broken, and people need to match it up, right? Next one is a contrast activity. And this essentially is finding the difference, finding the difference between different things or two things, so to speak. And one of my favorite ones to look at is, for example, what's the difference between training and education? What's the difference between training and presenting? What's the difference between X and Y, right? So it's a great way to get people firing off the neural pathways, finding the difference between two different things, right? A great salesperson versus a not so great salesperson, a great leader versus a not so great leader, right? So there's so many areas you can take a contrast activity into, and I'll show you an example of that in just a moment. Case study, right? Case studies are great. Basically saying to your group, okay, we have X situation, how would you handle it? Or we've got X problem, how would you handle it? Next one, research activity. You want to get your learners doing the research, not you, right? Make them work harder than you do. Next one, number 7, ordering sequence activity. Get people thinking about, all right, what is the order and sequence that you would approach this activity or this situation in, right? And this again aligns to how the brain works. It likes to order and sequence things and be able to justify why it would do things in a particular order. Advice to a newbie activity. I'll explain that in just a moment. Video list activity. Videos are fantastic, and they're a great way for you as a trainer to be looking for, great videos available. But also, you can get your learners to be looking for great videos as well as they are going through your content. Next up, number 10, teach back to the group activity, and number 11 is pre-written role play. So let's jump into an example of each of these, and let's check it out. So let's come down. So number one here, as I said, is a fill in the blank activity, right? So all you can do or all you need to do is to create some statements about the content you're going through and get people to fill in the blanks as you are training, or at the very end, you can use it as a quiz as well, right? I prefer, and I would encourage you to use it as a strategy of while you are delivering, because it's going to keep people a lot more alert, attuned, and engaged to your content, right? And then at the very end, you can actually make sure that everybody caught the right answers there as well. All right, so you can see some examples there, and as we go through it there. So next one is a mix and match activity, as I talked about. So again, this is focused very much on the vet world of Australia. But here is an example of definition and match the terminology, so to speak. So we got, in this case, we've got valid, authentic, current, sufficient, and then we've got match it up to the, I guess, meaning of that definition. But as I said, you could use this for legislation, policy, procedure, any kind of thing that you wanted to, even organization. So you can have a list of the organizations and what does that organization actually do? So the functions and the roles, and people can match them together. Now, it can also be done via cards that you hand out, right? And you can hand out cards to half the group and other cards to the other half of the group, and they need to mix and match, and they need to find their counterpart. So there's so many different spaces and places you can take the whole mix and match concept too. Next one, we've got a mix and match on an example of when it hasn't actually been performed, so to speak. So again, as I talked about, you can put the legislation and then an example of not meeting that legislation. Maybe it's a safety topic and safety legislation, an example of not meeting that safety legislation, so to speak. Or maybe it's leadership, and maybe you got a definition of leadership, and then an example of not meeting or not following that leadership style, right? So many different places you can take it. Next one, coming down, we've got contrast activity. As I talked about, contrast is a distinction or difference between two things. So in this case, we've got the difference in training, difference between training and facilitation and delivery, right? So you could say difference between training and education, difference between good sales person, bad salesperson, right? So many different areas, but distinction activities or contrast activities are a powerful way to get people thinking about the difference between one thing and another. If we come down, we've got a space for people to fill in. All right, in my mind, training is this, facilitation is this, delivering is this, and really getting group consensus on the topic there, right? So let's go to our next one. Case study, right? So we can put together a great case study, and by giving people a scenario, they need to be able to think about the topic and provide some ideas on how they would tackle that topic or that scenario. So in this case, I put together a scenario where we got some trainers that are delivering a very complex topic, and they have got like 100 PowerPoints every day, 300 PowerPoints over the 3 days. What advice would you give to that company that's running that scenario? Or you can have a case study. Maybe you're teaching leadership and you put together a case study where a company is underperforming. These are scenarios, these are situations. What are your 3 ideas that you would present for that, resolving that scenario there, right? A great way to build group discussion and get people thinking and applying what you've actually taught them there. So let's come down. Next one, we got research tasks. Okay, so maybe there is some legislation that you need to teach. Maybe there's some strategies that you need to get people used to, right? But in research, okay, instead of you doing the research, get your learners to do it. Maybe you send them to ChatGPT. Maybe you send them to Google, wherever it is, right? You've got a document. You need to get them to find the answers to particular things, create some questions, and get them researching the answers, right? So in this case, I've said something like, do a review of the standards for RTOs and research within the standard which thing would that not apply to, or which standard does that not meet, so to speak, right? Great way, instead of just reading the standards or reading the legislation, create some questions and get people to find the answers for you there, right? Great way for you to get familiar with things as well, right? So that's a simple research activity. You can create some questions and get people to go and find the answers for you there. So we'll come down, ordering and sequencing activity, right? So this is, again, in the area of training and presenting. Scenario, you have a training session coming up, list the order that you think the following tasks should be done in, right? So again, it could be something like maybe putting together a marketing plan. Okay, what are the order and steps that you think the marketing plan should be developed in, right? Or you have change management project that you're about to go through. What are the steps that you would go through? Put in the order. Again, it's a great springboard for class discussion, class debate, class whatever it may be. But by looking at this, it really accelerates the learning for your learners and they get familiar with the terminology very early on, right? So you could use this as a strategy very early on in the piece to then generate the discussion, or you could use this after you've gone through your content or at the very end. It doesn't matter. You've got so much flexibility there. So let's come back. So again, we got things like test the projector, read the learner's enrollment forms, write your session plan, make your slides, all of this really cool things that we would know instinctively there's probably a better order to do it in, right? Now, you could change it to, for example, you're going to deliver a keynote presentation. What are the order and sequence of the tasks that you would go through to prepare for it? All right. Or you're going to deliver a Zoom session. What's the order and sequence of the tasks that you would go through, right? So then let's come down. I've got another example here of ordering in sequence, different scenario, different topic, but that's totally fine. Again, it shows the versatility that you can, again, take any topic, but you can also have maybe 5 things, 6 things, 10 things, totally up to you how many things you want to have in your ordering and sequence activity. All right. So we'll come down and now we've got advice to a newbie activity. One of my favorites to run, but simply you have recently completed your X course. Let's imagine you've been undertaking the role of XYZ for the last year or even 6 months. You have learned a lot and you would like to share 10 pieces of advice to people that are just starting out. What are 10 things that you would give to someone or 10 pieces of advice based on what you've just learned or gone through in this course? Now, again, it could be a leadership course or a sales course or any kind of content at all that you think or that you've just delivered on there, right? So definitely a great way to get class discussion, class debate, pop people in groups and see what they come up with. Really, really cool activity. So we come down and we've got videos list. Now, again, in your session, you may use a lot of videos. Fantastic, right? So you can also tell your learners or your workshop participants, go and find their own videos. And this can be done for homework or it can be done during the session as well. So get your learners to find a copy or an example of bad whatever it is, right? Bad leadership or bad sales or bad whatever it is. Then find a video of the how-to, so good, like an example of best practice. And then maybe your learners could find an inspirational video regarding the topic, or maybe they could find another topic area of interest. So maybe it's the vein of sales. So maybe they go off and they find a video about expert communication or negotiation, whatever it may be there, right? So you can set a task for learners to find videos. What a crazy idea, right? And through finding them, they actually are expanding their knowledge base and they're going to maybe come back with some great resources that you can utilize going forward as well. So two-pronged purpose there. So we're going to come down and we've got teach back to the group activity, right? So you're a consultant working for, they have asked you to read the standards for, pick 6 key points, and then teach them back to the group. Or you want your learners to go and research or investigate XYZ topic and then teach it back to the group, right? So this basically just gives a place for them to identify those key points from the reading or the topic or whatever it may be. And then you get them to come back as a group and teach it back to your entire class, so to speak. Again, a very quick way to accelerate the learning of the individuals because when they need to teach it, they need to understand it. And there's going to be a higher acceptance of the information when they're sharing it to other people there, right? So teach back to the group. So now we come down and role play. Pre-written role play is one of my absolute favorite strategies to use and really fun things to build there, right? So you can use pre-written plays where basically you set up a scenario around any topic at all, right? So maybe it's going to be leadership, right? So it could be a great example of, I don't know, best practice leadership. So in here, maybe you write part A is the leader, part B is the follower, and it's about mentoring and coaching that the leader does, right? But it is about presenting a day in the life of XYZ. So a day in the life of a great salesperson, or a day in the life of a great leader, a day in the life of a great experienced presenter. And what you can actually do is you can weave in whatever scenario that you want to. So you could have part A says this, part B says that, and you can flesh out the entire scenario, and you can actually get your learners to read the scenario during your workshop, right? So maybe you've got particular strategies that you want your workshop attendees to learn. And what you do is you paint that out in the scenario or in the role play there, right? And you get the person actually talking about it or doing it. And then you can debrief the scenario that they've just been presented with there, right? Which is super cool because you can actually pre-teach vocabulary, pre-teach concepts by getting the learners to actually read through the role play. Maybe you get one person to do part A, the other person part B, and what I suggest is pop some comedy in there, pop in some experimental ideas, or just get creative as possible, right? Maybe even throw some swearing in there if appropriate. But the more fun that you have with it, the more people are going to get emotionally involved. And because it's pre written, they are less likely to be worried about looking silly or, doing a role play, so to speak, where there's no guidance. Now, another thing that you can do is get people to read it silently to themselves, highlight key vocabulary, and then do it with a partner and have as much fun with it as you really want to there, right? So pre-written scripts, pre-written role plays, fantastic strategy to use regardless of your topic, right? And you can get as creative as you truly want. And this example that I've got here, I really take it to the extreme. And I talk a lot about the day in the life of a trainer at an RTO here in Australia. All right, a lot of fun to read. And it touches on things like compliance and things like assessing and some of the dramas and things that happen. But the reason I created it was so that people got a real life, I guess, example and real life feeling of what it can be to be a trainer here in Australia or even internationally. So, what I aim to do by this list here is just show you some really quick and easy streetwise strategies and streetwise, I guess, resources you can build to be able to get your content even more engaging and even more, I guess, alive for your audiences there, right? So as I said, if you want a copy of these examples, shoot me an email and or drop a comment in the comments box below and I'll send it out to you. But I just love putting together quick and easy resources that you can use with your learners anytime, anywhere. And a lot of people go, oh, it's so hard to build a resource. Well, not really. If you know the types that you want to build, just build it, right? And the really awesome thing is all of the activities that I've just gone through there allow you to tap into the brain and how the brain actually learns, right? Mix and match, distinction activities, list activities, all those things. It's how the brain learns, folks, right? So if you want to get even better, faster results with your learners, start to deploy some of these activities and you're going to get some great results for sure. On that note, folks, thanks for watching and we'll see you on the next video, which really, again, is all about helping you speak to be remembered and having a bigger impact as a trainer, facilitator, coach, mentor, as you are. Thanks for watching, team, and we'll see you on the next one.